Today with our culinary demo, and the cuisine of Spice Kitchen and Bar really likes to represent a taste of place, or terroir is a taste of the region of where you're at. So what we're going to do today is we're going to render out some bacon. This is the best bacon in the state, which I cut very thick. We're going to make a classical French garnish to a salad called a lardon. And you'll notice that this bacon is really fatty and pretty wide. Right? So we get a lot of bacon in the store that's real thin and real like kind of slender and uniform. And for those of you that don't know, a bacon is a belly of a hog, right? So you can see how it's shaped. It's fat up here and it kind of gets slender down here, same up here. So a bacon sits right about here on an animal, right below the ribs, and it's a very underutilized muscle, which makes it pretty tender. The only thing it's usually doing is used to move the skin to get bugs off of it and things like that, like a shake muscle, as opposed to a power muscle like your butt or your thigh. That's a power muscle. That needs to cook for a long time, slow and low, right? Or a thinner, a less used muscle like this can be cooked a little bit faster and still be tender, or in this case, slightly crispy and juicy. So we're going to start our lardons by just taking some pretty large, thick, rough cuts of bacon here. And I'm not making bacon bits. I'm not trying to get this crispy. What I'm really trying to get is a diversity of pieces like that. So one very, very fatty, one pretty meaty. But we're going to render a lot of that fat out in this pan here. And I'm going to show you how to make a lardon that'll knock your socks off. Really good stuff. So basically I'm using a high-sided saute pan because I want to catch all that fat when I do get it to render out. And I'm not trying to get all of the fat off of it. I'm just trying to brown the edges, reduce it a little bit, and give it a little bit more texture. So we're going to talk about texture a lot today, and we're also going to talk a lot about fundamental technique of cuisine. Right? So the basics of what we're doing today, we are going to make a kale salad with bacon and peaches. And it's just an outstanding combination, man. Really is. So this kale was harvested this morning on farm.
Wow, fresh.
This is a Latisano kale, otherwise known as a dinosaur kale or a Tuscan kale. A lot of what you'll see in Heinen's is a lot tighter, like this, real wrinkly and tight. A lot of this stuff is pretty wide open out in the field, so it may look beat up to you, but that looks great to me. Some really, really good stuff. And what we're going to do is we're going to massage our dressing into our kale, because kale's pretty tough. Yes, ma'am?
What if you don't eat bacon?
You don't eat bacon?
No.
At all?
No.
Not even a little bit?
No. Bacon is
Really?
okay.
Okay. You will get a cider vinaigrette instead of the bacon vinaigrette.
Okay.
You're still getting peaches.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely. I was asking that earlier. I thought we had nothing, but you didn't hear me. I do not judge. My teacher, my partner actually in the business, and who's our on-farm educator, Steve Baker, is a vegetarian, and we ran this last class with all the kids, and I was like, who here doesn't eat bacon? And he's the only person. So we all collectively booed him. It was great.
Oh, the smell is amazing. Can you smell it? It's amazing.
The wind just will not stop catching that.
When you say you harvested, did you grow the kale here?
We grow the kale here, yes ma'am. So we grow about 20% of our own food for the restaurant and catering company on this property. We have about 6 acres that are under till, 13 acres all day. About 2.5 of that acreage is just for the chickens to roam and forage. So our yolks, our chicken eggs, have a much deeper orange tone to them than most chicken eggs, just because they're out in the field, they're eating bugs every day. Chickens are omnivores. They eat snakes. They eat baby rabbits. They'll eat anything. And man, when they turn up a baby rabbit nest, you see the dinosaur in them come out. Because it's like, whoosh, they're just right on it and they rip them up. But that's a good thing, because chickens being omnivores, as they're processing that protein and all those essential fatty acids, that's getting passed right down to us in our eggs. When a chicken is trapped in a warehouse and eating nothing but corn and soy, you're getting a really nutrient deficient egg. It may still be on the shelf, it may have just been gathered yesterday, but what's inside of it is the question that we're always asking, you know? Where does this food start? So what I'm doing with this Tuscan kale is I'm pulling it off the stems. I'm also, these are little caterpillar larva sacs there. We don't want that.
Added protein?
That is added protein. That is indeed added protein. But our kale that we grow out here is a beautiful crop for many, many reasons. One of the main reasons is it's a cut and come again product. So I can plant a kale plant in early May, and that will sit out there, and we'll just pick off of it piece by piece. We don't cut the whole thing. And you don't have to plant it again. So it's constantly feeding you throughout the year and off of a single seeding, which you saw that greenhouse. That is the real, that's the real work. Seeding, transplanting, watering. I'm going to turn this down and I'm going to show you evidence of a kale pest. So we have, every place has cabbage moths, like in a massive amount. All over northeastern Ohio, all over the world really. But we use a lot of row cover to prevent cabbage moths from really going crazy. Man, I was hoping I could find another larva sac for you guys to see because it's kind of interesting. But when we look for cabbage moths, what we actually are looking for is that. That is their poop, right? So they're eating these leaves and they're pooping out these little dark balls here, right? And that's what we're looking for to pull off of the plant. Seeing if I can find one. So it's really just about, there you go, that's a larva. That's the beginning. So a moth, it looks so beautiful out in the field, this little white moth, like butterfly. Oh, aren't they pretty? No, they are not. That is the answer. Absolutely not. They're evil. And we don't use sprays or toxins on our farm, so our only method of control is covering. So we use these big, like, they look like really long white bed sheets. And before the cabbage moths come, before their season, we cover the rows so then they can't get there, they can't lay their eggs on there, so they're forced to do it in other places. All right, let's talk about properly rendered bacon. This might have been more valid for my elementary school kids than you all, but we'll see. So a lardon, I'm trying to get a little bit of color on it. Your fat is foamy. Your bacon is brown, not black. Most importantly, the stuff on the bottom of the pan is brown, not black. Black means bitterness in bacon, right? We don't want bitterness. We have bitterness in kale. This is our richness. This is our smokiness. This is our savoriness.
Can you spell that for me, Lardon?
Lardon, L-A-R-D-O-N.
Okay.
Lardon.
I didn't want to be wrong about. Mhm. And there was another explanation you gave about the kale. What did you call it earlier?
Latisano kale.
Can you spell that for me?
Tuscan kale. Or dinosaur kale.
Okay.
All of those things will work.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is I'm tipping, you know, this is common sense for us because we cook, right? The kids I was talking to this morning, they don't know yet. So I'm tipping my pan to one side so the fat can pool, and I'm pulling the bacon lardons up out of the other side. So I'm getting as much of the oil off of there as possible, as much of the lard. I was talking to the kids this morning, like, what does bacon have in it? Oh, it has flavor, it has smoke, it has this. Okay, what else does it have? It has grease. Ah! Please don't use that word around. Greasy food is not good food, right?
Right.
But fatty, rich food has its place, right? Like, I love bacon fat, but I don't love bacon grease, you know what I mean? Like, getting greasy bacon versus rich, fatty bacon, two eternally different things. So I just wanted to make that clarification with our kids this morning. They were looking at me like, why does that matter, Chef Ben? I'm like, well, if somebody sent a dish back out of the dining room and said, this is greasy, I would have a problem with that, and I would have a problem with a cook for sending out greasy food. If somebody sent back a piece of bacon and said, this is fatty, I would say, well, no shit. It's bacon, you know what I mean? Like, so that's the difference, is greasy is something that we kind of have identified with as a very poor quality of food, whereas fatty has its place. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just stripping down the stems of these Latisano kales, Tuscan kales, dinosaur kales. And we're going to give them a wash because, as you saw, there is a lot of bioactivity, I like to say, on our products. So that being said,
That's a nice way to put it.
yeah, I mean, it is what it is, man. This is a farm. We wash our produce, but guess what? We don't scrub it with a brush, you know? And we sent out a salad last week in the dining room with a spider in it. And the dude was totally cool with it. He's like, hey, I just want to let you know there was a spider in my salad. I moved it. I finished my salad. You are my favorite customer. But really, I mean, that does happen to us. When we take greens to the restaurant, we wash our greens in 3 doses. So it gets washed here on farm. Oh, boom. Are you? Nope, you're not. Damn, I really wanted to show you a cabbage moth larva. We wash our greens on farm in a big deep sink, plunge them, spin them, put them in bags, send them to the restaurant. And when they get to the restaurant, they get dunked in 3 separate sinks to get all the grit and stuff and hopefully all the spiders off of it. But, I mean, you know, things happen. It doesn't always work out that way. So the way I like to do it is, aha, I found one. Yes, I knew there was some in here. That's why the dunking process is so important, because it gives you the opportunity to see what was in your lettuce, as opposed to just thinking, oh, it's clean, right? Yeah, it's pretty clean. All right, now let's look at a cabbage moth larva. Come here, you evil bastard. So this is something that, I hate to say it, this is a good thing, man. There he is.
Oh, yeah.
That is a good thing. Now, here's the deal. When you see that poop on your kale or on your cabbage,
That's who did it.
right? That's who did it. And look at that. That's where he hides. Right on the stem.
He's like camouflage.
The only way to get these dudes is to literally, oh man, I got some poop. And you lift up the leaf. Oh, there he is. And then, blam, squish him. My kids squirt them at each other. It's disgusting.
Set them free.
What else do you have for kids?
So, but that's a good sign, right? Because if a cabbage moth can live on that, that is a very nutrient-dense plant without pesticides, without toxins on it, and that's kind of what we're after. So we like to tell people, like, hey man, it's organic. You got a bug in your salad? Well, it's a pretty healthy salad right there. All right, so we need to make 2 different vinaigrettes, a bacon-free vinaigrette and a bacon vinaigrette. We're going to do that. All right, we're going to do that in 2 doses. We're going to start with our bacon-free vinaigrette, because then we're going to use that as our base for our bacon vinaigrette, okay? So the only place that bacon goes in this salad, we use the Lardons as a chewy, juicy, fatty texture differentiator in the salad, right? Then we use the fat as the oil for our vinaigrette, okay? We're going to use extra virgin in yours, ma'am, and it's going to be outstanding. Outstanding. All right. So the way I start a vinaigrette is usually always the same way. I start with an aromatic. You guys familiar with aromatics? Of course you are. So a few aromatics that are at the top of my list all times is scallions and garlic, of course. Who can cook without garlic? You know, if I came up with a garlic allergy,
I would lose my life.
I would be done. I think I would just be done.
You lose your farm. You lose your farm.
Right. I don't know if I can handle it. So that being said, scallions and garlic and another product, ginger, are the basis of almost all, not all, but a lot of Asian cuisine. So we call it GGS, ginger, garlic, scallion. So a lot of times when we're starting a sesame dressing or a stir fry or whatever, you can direct a line cook and say, hey man, I'm pulling a curry together, start me some GGS and then we'll take it from there. And so they'll actually, this is the baseline of flavor for vinaigrettes, for sauces, for braises, for stews, for soups, whatever. Why is that? Garlic and onions have a very high amount of glutamates. Monosodium glutamate, everybody's heard of that. That is basically distilled onions and garlic and then extracted out from there. They have a lot of glutamates, which creates a lot of baseline flavor. It's the starting point, right? That's where we go from. So we're gonna hack up these onions. And I like to take the green parts, or the white parts, and the light green parts, and cut them in really fine rounds. And then I like to throw a little bit of salt on top of them.
That wasn't very salty-ish.
Huh?
That wasn't very salty-ish.
I like to do that for two reasons. Number one, I bruise the salt into the onion, and it starts to build flavor.
Right.
Salt also explodes cell walls, right? If you're swollen and hurting after a long weekend on the dining room floor, I take an Epsom salt bath. Pulls the stuff out of me, all the swelling. It's doing the same thing for our onions. It's pulling juice out of these onions. Juice is flavor for this. It's breaking down cellulose. So then I'll take the green parts of these, and I like to cut them on a pretty hard bias, because this is sort of my garnish. This is sort of my like herb on top, and I'm not going to mutilate these to try and extrapolate flavor. These are going to be what you get flavor out of with your teeth in time, right? So now we're going to take our garlic, and we're going to cut this up a little bit. And part of this, for the vegetarian dressing, I'm going to do the salt trick on it. The other part of it, since I still have warm bacon fat over there, I'm going to throw some of this garlic in there and just let